Picture this. You're sitting at home, maybe watching television or reading a book. The phone rings. The voice on the other end sounds professional, maybe even caring. They say they're from a company you trust, like Geek Squad or Microsoft. They tell you there's a problem with your computer, something urgent that needs fixing right away. Your heart starts racing. You don't know much about computers, but you know they're important. You don't want to lose your photos, your emails, your connection to family. What you don't know is that the person on the other end isn't trying to help you. They're part of a massive criminal operation designed to steal your money, your personal information, and your peace of mind. They've targeted you specifically because of your age, your trust, and your vulnerabilities. They're counting on your fear and confusion to make them rich. This is the story of how one hacker decided to fight back against these predators. It's the story of a digital war fought in the shadows, where the weapons are computer code and the battlefield is the internet. But most importantly, it's the story of real people whose lives have been shattered by these scams, and the ongoing fight to protect others from the same fate. Every day in America, thousands of older adults receive calls just like this. The Federal Trade Commission reports that people over 60 lose more than $3 billion each year to phone scams. That's not just a number. Behind every dollar stolen is a real person, often living on a fixed income, who trusted the wrong voice on the phone. The story begins with something most of us do without thinking twice. We search for help online. When your computer isn't working right, or when you need technical support, you probably turn to Google. You type in something like Geek Squad or computer repair, and you expect to find legitimate help. But scammers have learned to game this system. Instead of getting the real Geek Squad website, you might see ads for companies with similar names. These fake companies pay Google to show their ads at the top of search results. To the average person, especially someone who didn't grow up with computers, these ads look exactly like the real thing. They have professional-looking websites, official-sounding names, and phone numbers that seem legitimate. When you call these numbers, you're not reaching computer experts. You're reaching criminal organizations, often based in India, that have spent years perfecting their ability to sound trustworthy while they rob you blind. They know exactly what to say to make you afraid. They know how to make you believe that your computer is in danger, that your personal information has been stolen, or that hackers are about to empty your bank account. The psychological manipulation is carefully planned. These scammers have studied how older adults think and react. They know that seniors are more likely to trust authority figures. They understand that many older people feel overwhelmed by technology and are afraid of making mistakes. They use this fear as a weapon. Our story follows one particular hacker who's made it his mission to track down and expose these criminal operations. He deliberately searches for fake tech support numbers and calls them not as a victim, but as someone who knows exactly what they're doing. His goal is to infiltrate their systems, gather evidence of their crimes, and disrupt their operations. When the hacker calls one of these fake numbers, he speaks to someone who claims to be named Frank Williamson from tech support. But the hacker knows this is a lie. The scammer's real name is Aditesh, and he's part of a criminal organization operating out of India. Aditesh follows a carefully scripted approach designed to convince callers that their computers are infected with viruses. The hacker pretends to have a problem with his Gmail account, giving Aditesh an opening to start his scam. Like all the scammers in this operation, Aditesh claims the problem is caused by a Trojan virus. He tells the hacker that there are 12 suspicious connections on his computer, and asks if he has 12 computers and laptops. This is a lie. The connections are completely normal parts of how computers work. Aditesh opens a program called Netstat, which shows network activity, and tries to convince the hacker that these normal connections are evidence of a virus. He claims that the hacker's computer will automatically open new browser tabs that direct to websites planted by hackers. He says that once the computer connects to these fake websites, malicious software will be installed without permission. None of this is true, but here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. While Aditesh is trying to scam the hacker is actually using the same remote access software to gain control of Aditesh's computer. It's like a digital judo move, using the criminal's own tools against him. The hacker can see everything on Aditesh's screen, access his files, and monitor his activities. Through this access, the hacker discovers something unusual. This particular scam operation has installed security cameras throughout their office. Most scam call centers don't have video surveillance, or if they do, they're much larger operations with 30 to 40 employees. But this office only has 6 to 7 people working at any given time in a relatively small room. These cameras give the hacker a unique window into the daily operations of a criminal enterprise. He can watch the scammers eat lunch, socialize with their co-workers, and go about their business as if they're working at any normal job. But more importantly, he can gather evidence of their criminal activities. After convincing the hacker that his computer is infected, Aditesh moves to the next phase of his scam. He tries to sell expensive software to fix the fake problems he's created. He quotes prices of $90 for something called a driver toolkit and $129 for anti-Trojan security of the web root. These products are either worthless or don't exist at all. Aditesh is trying to charge $219 for absolutely nothing. The hacker has heard enough of this nonsense. He decides to confront Aditesh directly. "I just want to know why you scam people," he says. "I guess you make a lot of money, right?" Aditesh immediately denies being a scammer, claiming he's just trying to fix computer problems. But the hacker knows better. He points out that everything Aditesh has shown him is fake, that the computer he's using is a virtual machine, and that all of Aditesh's claims about viruses are false. While this confrontation is happening, the hacker is also watching other scammers through the surveillance cameras. He sees the same person who just tried to scam him, Aditesh, now running the exact same script on another victim. Aditesh uses the same lies, the same fake diagnostic tools, and the same scare tactics on person after person. But this time, the hacker decides to intervene. He's actively listening to the call between Aditesh and a man named Robert. Aditesh is telling Robert that he's a technician and that Robert's computer has trojans and viruses. The hacker realizes that Robert is about to become another victim if he doesn't act quickly. The hacker calls Robert directly while he's still on the phone with the scammer. "Hi, is this Robert?" the hacker asks. "I'm calling because I believe you were contacting people from a technical support company. I want to let you know that those people are scammers." Robert is shocked. He had searched for Geek Squad on Google and thought he was talking to legitimate tech support. The hacker explains that Robert looked up Geek Squad on Google, but the people he contacted are not actually from Geek Squad. They're criminals pretending to be from that company. "Jesus Christ," Robert says, realizing how close he came to being scammed. Thanks to the hacker's intervention, Robert hangs up before losing any money. Unfortunately, not everyone is as lucky as Robert. Through his access to the scammer's computers, the hacker has downloaded evidence of many successful scams. The evidence includes photographs of victims and records of payments they've made for worthless services. The amounts range from $55 to $500, representing significant financial losses for people who are often living on fixed incomes. One photograph particularly highlights the cruelty of these scammers. It shows an elderly man holding up a check for $500 made out to one of the scammer's fake companies. The scammers forced him to hold up the check as proof of payment, showing their complete lack of empathy for the people they're hurting. The man looks confused and vulnerable, exactly the kind of person these criminals target. The hacker's investigation reveals the full scope of this criminal operation. Through his access to the scammer's internal systems, he discovers that they've managed to steal money from more than 500 people over just 15 months. The total amount stolen is $569,000. These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. Each entry represents a real person who trusted the wrong voice on the phone. The financial impact of these scams goes far beyond the immediate loss of money. For many seniors, losing even a few $100s can mean choosing between medication and groceries, between heating their home and paying for utilities. The psychological impact can be even worse. Victims often feel stupid, embarrassed, and angry at themselves for being fooled. They lose trust in everyone around them and may become isolated and depressed. The scammers, meanwhile, show no remorse for the pain they cause. Through the hackers' surveillance of their office, we can see them laughing and socializing after successfully stealing from elderly victims. They eat lunch together, chat with their co-workers, and go home to their families as if they'd spent the day doing honest work. The operation is sophisticated and well organized. It's located in a modern office building in Noida, India, just outside of New Delhi. The scammers work normal business hours, have supervisors, and follow scripts, just like any other call center. But instead of helping customers, they're stealing from vulnerable people thousands of miles away. The hacker discovers that the boss of this operation is a man named Parul, who according to his LinkedIn profile is the founder and CEO of a company called Geek Care Online. Parul can often be seen at his desk on the security cameras, overseeing the criminal operation. But Parul isn't just running one business. He's also the director of two other companies, Hillatrip Private Limited, which is used to process credit card payments, and strangely, HVP Pharmaceuticals. This pharmaceutical connection leads the hacker to another key figure in the operation, Surara. She's listed as a director of the pharmaceutical business and, according to her LinkedIn profile, actually worked in the pharmaceutical industry in the past. But the hacker is surprised to see her in the same office where the scamming is taking place. Through access to her computer, he discovers that she's not just Parul's business associate, but his wife. Surara plays a crucial role in managing the scam operation. When any of the scammers successfully steal money from a victim, they fill out a Google form with information about the victim's name, email address, payment method, and amount stolen. Surara has access to the responses from this form as a spreadsheet, giving her and the hacker a detailed look at every crime committed by the operation. The spreadsheet reveals the devastating scope of their criminal activity. In just 15 months, they've scammed 500 people out of $569,000. The average loss per victim is around $379, but some people have lost much more. Individual losses range from $55 to $500, with many victims losing several $100s each. Sarara is also responsible for managing the Google AdWords account that brings victims to the scammers. This advertising campaign specifically targets searches for Geek Squad and is shown to about 9 people each month. The majority of these people are 65 or older, exactly the demographic the scammers want to reach. The scammers spend between $809 $0 per month on these ads. This might seem like a lot of money, but when you calculate the return on investment, it becomes clear why they're willing to pay so much. With monthly revenue of about $38 dollars, they're getting a 645% return on their advertising investment. These kinds of returns are only possible when you're running a criminal operation targeting vulnerable people. The hacker also discovers how the scammers process payments from their victims. Because handling international payments can be difficult and might attract attention from authorities, the scammers use a network of companies in the United States to launder their stolen money. These American companies receive payments from victims and then transfer the money to the scammers in India, taking a cut for themselves. The hacker identifies several of these money laundering operations and reports them to federal authorities. He records a phone call with one of the company owners, who claims she's just outsourcing work to India, but the hacker's investigation reveals that all the people she works with are scammers. A Google search shows that her company was involved in another type of scam years earlier, proving that this isn't an innocent mistake. But the scammers also make a crucial error. In addition to using American companies for money laundering, they also use their real Indian companies to process credit card payments. This gives the hacker access to the true identities of the people running the operation. He discovers that the main business is called Geek Care Online, run by Parul and his wife Sarara. The most disturbing aspect of this operation is how the bosses treat their own employees. The hacker finds an email that Sarara sent to all the workers, explaining the incentive plan for August 2023. For every $500 they steal from victims, employees receive 250 rupees, which converts to about $3. This means the workers are making less than 1% of what they're stealing, while the bosses keep 99% of the profits. This system exploits everyone involved. The victims lose their money, the employees are paid almost nothing for destroying people's lives, and only the bosses get rich. It's a criminal enterprise that feeds on vulnerability and greed at every level. Determining the exact location of the scammers proves more challenging than the hacker initially expected. The IP address indicates they're in Noida, but the business address shows Faridabad. These are different cities, though both are in the Delhi National Capital Region. The hacker examines Google Street View images of the registered address and finds that none of the buildings are tall enough to match the elevated view visible through the scammer's office window. The breakthrough comes by accident. While reviewing old footage from the security cameras, the hacker notices something unusual. The office has cameras both inside and outside, including one that shows the hallway leading to their door. In one recording, the hacker sees a cleaner opening the door to an adjacent office. He's never seen this door open before, and while there appears to be writing on it, the camera angle makes it difficult to read, but when the door opens, it provides a clear view of inverted text on the other side. By flipping the image horizontally, the hacker can read the name and logo of the business, Story Design. This is a legitimate product design agency that operates during normal Indian business hours and likely has no idea they're next to an office full of scammers. The address of Story Design leads the hacker to a shared office space called the KJ Noida 1. This is a complex of 3 buildings, Tower A, Tower B, and Tower C. The address indicates that Story Design is located in Tower C, which means the scammers are likely in the same building. To confirm this location, the hacker examines the view from the scammer's office window. He can see a tall building in front of the window and a much shorter building to the right. Satellite imagery shows this exact same structure in front of Tower C, confirming that the scammers are indeed in that building. The owners of KJ Noida 1 helpfully provide floor plans on their website, making it easy to determine the exact room. Story Design is listed as being in room 921, and the floor plan shows that room 922 is directly adjacent. Based on the camera angles and the layout of the hallway, the hacker determines that the scammers are operating from room 922. To absolutely confirm this location, the hacker asks a friend named Neep, who was in India at the time, to visit the building in person. Neep bravely goes to the KJ Noida 1 building and takes video footage of the exact location. He finds the 9th floor, locates room 921 where Story Design is located, and confirms that room 922 is right next door. The office appears to be empty during the day, which makes sense since the scammers work at night to match American business hours. Having gathered all this evidence, the hacker decides it's time to move from observation to action. He starts by sending emails to previous victims, letting them know they've been scammed and advising them on how to try to recover their money. Most people don't respond, probably because they don't check their email regularly or they're embarrassed about being scammed. But one response stands out and breaks the hacker's heart. It's from a woman in her 70s who explains that she was going through a difficult time because her husband had recently passed away. The scammers took advantage of her grief and vulnerability, stealing money from her during one of the most difficult periods of her life. Fortunately, because of the hacker's email, she was able to contact her bank, dispute the charges, and get her money back. This response reinforces the hacker's determination to stop these criminals. It's not enough to help people recover money after they've been scammed. The real goal is to prevent the scams from happening in the first place. The hacker decides to launch a direct attack on the scammer's ability to reach new victims. The first weapon in his arsenal is something called a call flooding attack. This involves programming computers to make dozens of automated phone calls every second to the scammer's phone lines. The goal is to overwhelm their phone system so that real potential victims can't get through. Every time a scammer picks up the phone, instead of reaching a potential victim, they hear an extremely loud, annoying screaming noise designed to hurt their ears and disrupt their work. The call flooding attack is immediately effective. The scammers' phones are constantly ringing, but every call is the same loud, obnoxious noise. They can't conduct their normal business because their phone lines are completely jammed. The hacker continues this attack for hours, making it impossible for the scammers to reach new victims. But the scammers adapt to the call flooding by simply turning off their main phone number and focusing on people they're already in contact with. They continue working with victims they've already hooked, trying to complete scams that are already in progress. The hacker realizes he needs to escalate his attack. The next step is to attack the scammer's internet connection directly. The hacker launches what's called a denial of service attack, which overwhelms the scammer's internet connection with so much traffic that it becomes unusable. This not only disconnects their phone calls, but also breaks the remote access connections they've established with their victims' computers. The combination of call flooding and internet attacks makes it nearly impossible for the scammers to operate. They can't make outbound calls to new victims, they can't maintain connections with existing victims, and they can't access the online systems they need to process payments. The hacker has effectively shut down their entire operation. At this point, the scammers realize something is seriously wrong. The hacker watches through the security cameras as the scammers start pointing at the surveillance equipment, clearly understanding that they've been hacked. They're panicked and confused, trying to figure out how their supposedly secure operation has been compromised. The next day, the scammers disconnect all their security cameras and never reconnect them. They've realized that the cameras are a liability, providing their attacker with too much information about their operations. But they make a critical mistake. They forget about their computers, which the hacker still has access to. With the scammer's operation severely disrupted and their confidence shaken, the hacker decides it's time for the final confrontation. He calls their phone number, not as a potential victim, but as someone who knows exactly who they are and what they've been doing. The first person to answer is Chintu, one of the scammers who usually pretends to be named David when talking to victims. The hacker immediately cuts through the pretense. "Who am I talking to? Is this David from Geek Squad?" he asks. "Your name is David, because I'm 90% sure that your name is not David. In fact, I know it's not David." The hacker continues, "Your name is Chintu, and I know everything that you've been up to. My concern is that you're in a scam call center. Chintu, so let me ask you a few questions. Firstly, how did you join the scam call center and how much do you get paid?" And Chintu tries to deny everything, claiming his name really is David, and that he's just trying to help people with their computer problems. But the hacker isn't interested in games. He tells Chintu that he's been investigating their scam call center, that he knows everyone who works there, and that he knows exactly where they're located. The hacker calls back and asks to speak to Parul, the boss of the operation. When another scammer answers, the hacker again demonstrates his knowledge of their operation. "I'm somebody who's been investigating your scam call center, and I want to ask some questions. I'm going to be real with you, okay? I know everybody in your office. I know Shashi, Chintu, Spar, Aditesh. Everybody in your office. I know Parul. I know you're in the Noida 1 building. I know the room that you're in. So just give me Parul, because you're not going to be able to answer any of the questions I'm going to ask." The scammer tries to deny everything, claiming he's not calling at the right place. But the hacker has specific details that prove otherwise. "Do you know what the KJ Noida 1 building is? Do you know Unit 922? You ever heard of that?" The scammer claims he's never heard of Unit 922, but the hacker knows he's lying. "You've never heard of Unit 922 and you've never heard of story design?" The hacker asks. "You know we sent somebody up to your building. You know that, right? Somebody took photos of your office. I think you know what Unit 922 is." The level of specific detail clearly shakes the scammer, who realizes that their operation has been completely compromised. After this confrontation, the scammer hangs up the phone, but the hacker is still able to monitor their audio through his access to their computer systems. He captures their panicked reactions to learning that they've been hacked. The scammers are clearly frightened and confused, unsure of what to do next. Their supposedly secure operation has been completely infiltrated, and they realize that their personal information and illegal activities have been exposed. The impact of this digital vigilante's work extends far beyond disrupting this single scam operation. His investigation has provided law enforcement with detailed evidence of criminal activity, including financial records, victim information, and the identities of the people involved. The money laundering companies he identified are under investigation by federal authorities, and the detailed documentation of the scammers' methods can help protect future victims. The investigation also reveals the global nature of these crimes. The scammers operate from India, target victims in the United States, and use money laundering networks that span multiple countries. This international scope makes these crimes difficult to prosecute through traditional means, which is why unconventional approaches like the hackers' investigation can be so valuable. But the broader impact is on public awareness. By documenting and sharing the details of how these scams work, the hacker has provided valuable information that can help people protect themselves and their loved ones. Understanding the tactics scammers use, knowing how to recognize fake tech support calls, and being aware of the emotional manipulation techniques can help potential victims avoid falling into these traps. The story also highlights the human cost of these crimes. The 500 victims of this single operation represent thousands of families affected by elder fraud. Each person who lost money to these scammers faced not just financial hardship, but also emotional trauma, embarrassment, and a loss of trust in the world around them. The elderly man forced to hold up his check for $500 represents all the vulnerable people who have been taken advantage of by these heartless criminals. For many victims, the impact goes beyond the immediate financial loss. They may become suspicious of all phone calls, reluctant to use their computers, and isolated from the digital world that increasingly connects us to our families and communities. The fear of being scammed again can be paralyzing, preventing seniors from getting legitimate help when they need it. The criminals behind these operations show no empathy for the people they hurt. They've created a system that specifically targets the most vulnerable members of society, using their trust and confusion as weapons. They celebrate successful scams, laugh at their victims' pain, and continue their criminal activities without regard for the lives they're destroying. The widow who lost money while grieving her husband's death represents the cruel reality of these crimes. The scammers didn't care that she was vulnerable and in pain. They saw her grief as an opportunity to steal from her. This level of heartlessness is what drives people like the hacker to fight back against these predators. But stories like this one offer hope. They show that there are people willing to fight back against these predators, using their technical skills to disrupt criminal operations and protect potential victims. While law enforcement agencies work to prosecute these crimes through official channels, digital vigilantes like the hacker in this story provide an additional layer of protection for vulnerable people. The investigation demonstrates that these scammers are not untouchable. Their operations can be infiltrated, their methods can be exposed, and their activities can be disrupted. The hacker's work shows that with the right skills and determination, it's possible to turn the tables on these criminals and make them the hunted instead of the hunters. As technology continues to evolve, so do the methods used by both scammers and those who fight them. The cat-and-mouse game between criminals and defenders is likely to continue, with each side developing new techniques and strategies. But awareness remains one of the most powerful tools in protecting potential victims. The most important lesson from this story is that these scams are preventable. By understanding how they work, recognizing the warning signs, and knowing how to respond, people can protect themselves and their loved ones from becoming victims. The scammers rely on fear, confusion, and isolation to succeed. Knowledge, preparation, and community support are the best defenses against their attacks. When Robert received that call from the hacker warning him about the scam, it saved him from becoming another victim. But it also shows how important it is for people to look out for each other. The hacker could have simply gathered his evidence and reported it to authorities, but he chose to actively intervene to protect individual victims. For families with elderly relatives, this story serves as a reminder to have conversations about phone scams and online safety. Many seniors are embarrassed to admit they don't understand technology, which makes them more vulnerable to these attacks. By creating an environment where older adults feel comfortable asking questions and seeking help, families can provide an important layer of protection. The story also demonstrates the importance of legitimate businesses taking steps to protect their customers. Companies like Geek Squad, whose name and reputation are being exploited by scammers, have a responsibility to educate their customers about these threats, and to make it easier for people to verify that they're dealing with the real company rather than imposters. In the end, this digital vigilantes war against elder fraud represents a broader struggle between those who would exploit vulnerable people and those who seek to protect them. While the hacker's methods may be unconventional, his goals are clear: to stop criminals from victimizing innocent people and to bring justice to those who prey on the elderly. The fight against elder fraud requires cooperation between law enforcement, technology companies, families, and communities. By working together, sharing information, and staying vigilant, we can make it harder for scammers to succeed and easier for potential victims to stay safe. The story of this investigation is ultimately a story about the power of determination and technical skill to fight injustice. One person, armed with knowledge and a computer, was able to infiltrate a criminal organization, disrupt their operations, and potentially save hundreds of people from being victimized. It's a reminder that in the digital age, the fight for justice can take many forms, and that sometimes the most effective defenders are those who work in the shadows to protect the innocent. When the scammers realized they had been completely exposed, their panic was evident in their voices. The hacker had turned their own tools against them, used their own systems to gather evidence of their crimes, and ultimately left them nowhere to hide. Their criminal empire, built on the suffering of vulnerable people, crumbled when faced with someone who refused to let them operate in the shadows. The investigation serves as a warning to other scammers that their activities are not as hidden as they think. There are people watching, gathering evidence, and working to bring them to justice. The digital age has created new opportunities for criminals, but it has also created new ways to catch them and protect their victims. This story reminds us that behind every scam statistic is a real person with real feelings and real consequences. The numbers may be staggering, but the individual stories are what truly matter. Every Robert who is saved from being scammed, every widow who gets her money back, every elderly person who doesn't have to choose between medication and food because they weren't victimized. These are the real victories in the fight against elder fraud. The hackers' work continues, and scammers around the world now know that someone is watching, someone is fighting back, and someone is willing to use their own tactics against them. In the ongoing battle between predators and protectors, this investigation proves that the good guys can win, one exposed scammer at a time.